Hello everyone, my name is Meghdut Chowdhury. I am a serial entrepreneur, currently the Chief Innovation Officer of Techno India Group, one of the largest educational conglomerates in India. I'm also the co-founder of Bengal Business Council and founder of Offbeat CCU, a school of the future. I come here today representing the DLC Global Innovation and Design Thinking Committee, Kolkata chapter, and I will be talking to all of you about truth to power, how young leaders are reshaping the future. So ever since I was a young kid, I think growing up in a family of entrepreneurs, I always knew that I would be an entrepreneur sometime in my life. And there was no other way of looking at my life. And so when my father, who's been a serial entrepreneur from the time that he got into his own professional life, he started taking me to different places to meet people who were the heads of society, heads of state, ministers, people who were in power. And from that time itself, I always started getting an idea of how vast the world is and what the possibilities are, which sort of helped shape my worldviews of what I wanted to do with my life. In India, we say that first we become an engineer and then we decide what we want to do with our lives. My story was not very different from that. Having been a serial overachiever, I guess, in school, having stood first for all of my childhood from the time that I can think of. When I entered college, I started my career as a computer engineer, as a bachelor's in computer engineering. And then halfway through, at some point, I figured that, you know what, maybe I was not as good with coding as I was with people. And hence, I decided to change my journey a little bit. And I had this massive passion for music and art and culture. And so in the city of Calcutta, I started a recording studio called Blooper House Studios when I was about 19 years old. And that's where I started not just pushing art and culture in this part of the country, but also creating a space for young people to come and create content. And this is way before content creation even was a field or was known to young people that much in this part of the country. So it really sort of shaped up a lot of lives in the last 11, 12 years that we've been running Blooper House Studios. And it sort of changed my perspective on my entrepreneurial journey as well. And at that time, I'm still thinking of, okay, this is what I want to do later in life. But having come from the educational space, because our family's been in education and being a second generation entrepreneur from a massive educational group like Techno India Group, which was created by my father about 36 years ago, I knew that at some point I would have to combine my passion, which was in the space of arts, media, creativity, design, and culture, and combine that with education. So, but this was around the time I also figured out that if I wanted to pursue the entrepreneurial journey, then I needed to know how it really worked and needed to put myself on the scale with where global entrepreneurs were, what they were doing, and I figured I had to go and work in some of the fastest growing entrepreneurship ecosystems in the world. Hence, I started off right after I finished my computer science degree. I started off at HEC Paris Business School, where I studied international business, intercultural negotiations, and entrepreneurship as a minor. I went on to Stanford University in the United States, where I started my second company, which was in the field of HR gamification. I used to work with the likes of Uber, Lyft, Facebook, Google, and I used to help them hire through this app that I had created, which helped gamify the human resources space. I was mentored by Guy Kawasaki, everyone in the valley, and this is a great time in my life, I feel personally, because as a young starry-eyed boy sort of who's come from Calcutta in the valley, seeing the world around, every single entrepreneur, every investor, every venture capitalist was just a degree of separation away. And this was around the time when I really started getting a scope for what I wanted to do in my life. And this is also around the time, I think, the idea that I wanted to come back to my home city, my hometown, and help towards rebuilding it and making it more accessible, more interesting, more sexy, let's say, for young people to come back or to not leave in the first place itself as a potential career option. So the idea of entrepreneurship for me went more from, okay, I'm going to create $1 billion company versus, I'm going to create an entire stack of organizations that would support young people, that would help creating a cohesive narrative around the city that I'm in, and which is when I started working with a lot of young people towards achieving this entrepreneurial goal as a 24, 25-year-old. Right after this, I moved to Tel Aviv in Israel, which is one of the largest startup hubs in the world right now, and it's been fast growing in the last few decades. This was another very interesting place for my own journey of learning, because this is when I started working with the likes of Barclays Bank for their Techstars program at Rise Tel Aviv, and I was writing my PhD thesis. And this is when I figured that, hey, you know what? There is an interesting way of combining academia with entrepreneurship as well, because entrepreneurs, I believe, are not always born. A lot of them are also created, and if the journey can be clearly defined, there is no way that you cannot be an entrepreneur if you follow that path with perseverance and determination. So right after I finished school, around that time, I came back to Calcutta, and that's when the real journey begins. By this time, I'm already deeply embedded in the cultural space of the city. I've already produced more than 2,000 albums through my studio. But then I figured that, you know what, just me creating certain startups or organizations is not going to be enough. Becoming an ecosystem player would be more important. And that's when I started building the first set of incubators and accelerators and co-working spaces under the Techno India Group banner. I also built a school of the future in 2018, which is called Offbeat CCU. So Offbeat CCU is a very interesting space. It's an experiential, interdisciplinary center for learning where it's focused on adult education, on everything from comedy, arts, music, theater, coding, acting, fitness, strength, MMA, and we bring it all together in one space under one roof. And we're sort of building this ecosystem where young people came and all these amazing energies converged. I think that's when I first started getting a taste of what it would mean to be sort of an ecosystem enabler for the city of Calcutta. And I'm very glad that I decided to take on that super challenging decision and that super challenging project, which was to convert this old shady hotel into a school of the future. And, you know, fast forward to 2022, this has become a hotbed for innovation and culture and creativity, wherein even recently, just a couple of weeks ago, we hosted the team from Tomorrowland Foundation in Belgium, where we're helping them build their first ever school in Asia, which is focused on music education. So I figured throughout this journey that I cannot do this all by myself. I need the support of a lot of other young people, and that's when I also started believing in the positive network effects of being a well-connected person in any ecosystem. So I started working with a lot of young entrepreneurs in a hive entrepreneur model. I would rather any day have an intrapreneur within my organization who thinks like an entrepreneur, who thinks out of the box, although thinking out of the box is the most in-the-box thinking that there can be, given B schools in the way that they run these academic narratives, but just like, people who bring in the entrepreneurial energy into any room or boardroom or into any co-working space that they come into, and which is when we started building ecosystems and collectives around sustainability, around innovation, around entrepreneurship. So currently we run Y East, which is a sustainability collective with more than 160 social enterprises, NGOs, social businesses, and academic institutions. Parallelly, we run Innovators Over Coffee, which is a monthly session for bringing innovators together. And these are just some of the little things that we do to sort of see where young people are heading in days to come, how the future of education, how the future of entrepreneurship itself is being shaped, and especially for a city like Calcutta that has always faced this challenging narrative that it's a slow city, that people come here only during Durga Puja or they come here to retire. That's a narrative that I was personally very, very keen to change, and that's what we've been focusing on. So around 2020, right at the peak of the pandemic, we decided to launch this campaign called Make Calcutta Relevant Again, where the only intention was to bring young people back, was to bring good energies back into Calcutta, be they in the field of F&B, of hospitality, of tech, of logistics, of agri-tech, and whatever they were doing in their lives, just give them the support that's necessary in terms of providing mentorship, creating funding opportunities, providing grants, giving them access to markets. And we started seeing a bloom in the way that the city was responding to this young narrative, I think. And this was around the same time that we hosted one of the biggest ever startup events in Calcutta called the Startup Carnival 4.0, where more than 100,000 people tuned in live to watch this, and more than 500 people watching it physically as well. And it was incredible, the kind of energies that we've seen being shaped up in the last few years in the field of innovation and entrepreneurship are very promising. I'm very hopeful, and the ride has not always been very simple. There's been a lot of hurdles in terms of changing mindsets. I think that's the hardest change to bring about, especially when it comes to a comparatively slower city, if we say, compared to the other bigger cities, the bigger metro cities in India, and changing mindsets of people who want their kids to go and take on government jobs, or they want to take on jobs of any form because they do not feel comfortable with the idea that their kids are going to become startup entrepreneurs. So that narrative has been changing a little bit over time, we feel. And also living in the post-Shark Tank era, I clearly demarcate the world of entrepreneurship in India to a pre-Shark Tank and post-Shark Tank era, because in the post-Shark Tank era, we finally see conversations around the dinner table in regards to innovation, when it's not just about what K-serial's up next or what reality TV shows up next. So I'm very hopeful, and I see that even as a second generation entrepreneur, a lot of times you get compared with the previous generations, and they say, okay, your father or your family have done incredible things, how do you even fill in those shoes? And I figured that I was not the only person with that kind of plight, which is when I decided to co-found the Bengali Business Council, wherein we have already brought together about 200 second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation entrepreneurs from pre-independence times who've run Bengal's businesses over these years. And now we have a common voice, we have a common platform, we have a common scenario from where we can influence public policy, we can influence governmental decisions that take place, and just in general create a more positive outlook towards entrepreneurship in Bengal, towards doing business in Bengal. And in the days to come, I am hopeful that we will be able to change that narrative, that Bengal is not what it used to be. I mean, we're not talking about Bengal from the 1800s, when it was perhaps the most bustling, the most innovative, the most outgoing city with a large part of the contribution to the GDP worldwide, which was coming from Bengal itself. But what we're talking about is the Bengal from the last few decades, where I personally believe, have sold into a lot of mediocrity, and we've become complacent, and we've decided to take things the way they are. So it's going to be a long and uphill task, I believe, and but that does not mean that we should shy away from it, right? So hopefully in days to come, we will see that more and more kids taking on riskier paths, traveling roads less traveled in general. And even if we are able to change the mindset of 1% of people here in Bengal and convert them from doing business is not that good to yes, doing business is great, and going and creating jobs and creating opportunities for other people is what sets you apart, I think I would have done my job. And I am very, very inspired by my own father. I mean, we always talk about our inspirations, so I feel that it's very important I talk about Professor Gautam Roy Chowdhury, who's a first generation entrepreneur who moved from Bangladesh along with so many other people at that time in Bengal, and built a first generation educational conglomerate which currently houses more than 100 campuses. We have more than 100,000 students across the country, and this just means that the scope of doing impact is great, and we will get to work with so many young people, and all of this coming from somebody who had no experience with entrepreneurship, went to a Bengali medium school on the other side of the border, and had no support from funders, from VCs, from investors at any given point. So I am very inspired by his journey of having built this from nothing, and I believe with all of the resources and connections that I have been blessed with all of the education that I've been blessed with, if we are not able to take this city forward and change its narrative, and not just in the field of education, but in hospitality, in healthcare, in innovation, in sustainability, then we would not have done our jobs. So I believe that the future is equitable, the future is inclusive, the future is sustainable, and definitely innovative. And I believe that we are going to be at the brink of change as young people shaping the world. We are the change, we can bring about the change, we can change policies. And if we believe in the cause well enough, if we believe in our purpose, I'm sure we can redefine the future that is handed over to us, but more importantly, we can shape the way that the future itself is built. Thank you very much for listening to me. I thank the team DLC and team Jimmy Mistry from the bottom of my heart for creating this platform so that more and more people out there can get inspired and get motivated by leaders talking about their journeys and what got them to where they are today. And hopefully we'll have a lot of young leaders coming out from the bedrooms and from the boardrooms that you are watching this video from. Thank you very much. This is Meghdut Chowdhury signing off.